New glimpses of hope have appeared within the classic community, and of course, it has absolutely nothing to do with Blizzard. It's all because of the community itself. So the results from the Classic Plus project website are out, and after going through them, I'm honestly shocked. Not only did the players avoid being completely divided on every important topic, but they also didn't give a bunch of terrible takes. I expected a lot of chaos and I expected a lot of stupidity. Instead, the community actually showed a surprising amount of clarity about what makes this game work. And I think that's something people should genuinely be proud of, because this is not just some random feedback. This is probably the clearest picture Blizzard will ever have of what classic players actually want. If they ignore this, well, holy fuck, I guess. Failing with so much free help is also an accomplishment, I guess. But to be fair, I think they are paying attention and I don't think they're this stupid, right? Right? Now, before we get into the results, if you somehow lived under a rock, the Classic Plus project website is an insanely impressive piece of work put together by Jordi and a few other people. It's basically a full hub for Classic Plus, surveys on everything, classes, progression, world design, systems, all of it, plus tons of player ideas and concepts. Some of them are so freaking creative and they show just how much passion is still alive in this community. So enough time has passed since the launch of the website and now we finally have some statistics. And like I said, they're pretty good. If Blizzard is paying attention, and they absolutely should be, this is gold. This is exactly the kind of data that can save you from making very bad decisions. So let's go through some of the most important ones. How do you feel if Classic Plus had an element of seasonal server, resetting every couple of years? My honest answer is, for fuck's sake, no. Please, no, absolutely not. Seasonal goes against the core of what an MMO is supposed to be. The whole point is building a world that feels permanent, where your character and your progress actually matters long term. Not this cycle of quick dopamine, fast content, reset and then repeat. That's why I never liked Season of Mastery and Season of Discovery to begin with. They had other problems too, but the biggest issue was always the fact that they were temporary. It just kills the motivation to invest in your character when you know everything is on a timer. Well, 30% of people agree, and over 50 are not sure and think it depends on many factors. That is 80% of the player base leaning towards no, which will make Blizzard really think twice whenever they ask themselves,
should we add this feature that goes against the fundamentals of what an MMO is in our MMO?
Will this stop them from doing this shit again? It's Blizzard we are talking about, so the answer is not 100% no. They still might do it, but at least the chance is probably much lower. Should Dungeon Finder be implemented? The most popular answer, around 67%, was yes, but only as a tool to help you form groups. You still have to travel to the dungeon yourself. Honestly, the perfect answer. This is the version we have on the Anniversary Realms right now, and it's great. It just shows you people looking for the same dungeon as you, which removes the annoying part of spamming whispers without killing the actual experience. Because let's be real, there is no meaning social value in randomly messaging strangers hoping they want to join. The real social part happens inside the dungeon, or while you wait for people to come. That's where you talk, cooperate, maybe add people to your friend list. A simple group finder doesn't mess with that. What I like most about this result though isn't just the feature itself, but what it says about the community. Players aren't stuck in this blind, no changes mindset anymore. People are starting to understand the difference between meaningful friction and pointless friction. Some inconvenience adds depth and identity, other inconvenience is just annoying and wastes your time. And it looks like more and more players are finally recognizing that. That's a really good sign for Classic Plus, because in the past, the community had a really big problem with this. Should there be heroic dungeons? 46% said it depends on the implementation, and honestly, that's the best possible answer again, because yes, I do think they should exist. But not in the way TBC did it. no attunements, and definitely no lazy UI button where you just click heroic and suddenly the dungeon is harder. That always felt super gamey and immersion breaking. It's the most boring immersion breaking solution imaginable. The better approach is something closer to old war hard modes. The difficulty should come from things you do inside the game, inside the dungeon, not from a menu. Some bosses, maybe even all of them, could have a hidden optional hard mode. For example, a boss that spawns ads, and if you kill the boss without touching the ads, that's the hard version, tada! Or a mechanical boss where there's a switch in the room that overcharges the boss. Or even something as simple as a DPS check where you have to kill the boss before something happens. Stuff that feels natural and part of the world, not some artificial toggle. Now here's where I might be in the minority though, because I don't think hard modes should guarantee better loot every time. That would instantly create a new meta where everyone feels forced to do them. Instead, bosses could give a good chunk of extra gold as a baseline reward, so it never feels pointless to do them in a hard mode, but the real incentive would be a small pool of hard mode only items that have a chance to drop on top of the normal drops. Imagine the Deadmines, you beat Edwin Van Cleef without killing the ads. On top of the normal loot, he might also drop a decent necklace or something. Not guaranteed, just a chance. This way, players who care can go for it, but the average group doesn't feel pressured or locked out if they don't. It keeps the spirit of Classic intact while still adding depth and replayability without turning everything into mandatory optimized content. Then there are 3 questions about the level required for a mount, flying mounts, and leveling speed. No one wants flying mounts, no one wants to see the level requirement for mounts lowered, and no one wants to see the speed of leveling increased. Most people actually, of course, there are some outliers. I think no one is surprised, but these are such important aspects of the game, and it's reassuring to see everybody be on the same page. Should Classic Plus have new classes? I wish more people said no, but at least no is still the most common answer at around 42%. A new class could work, but it's extremely risky and just not necessary. Even if Blizzard somehow pulls it off and it feels vanilla friendly, the gain isn't as huge as people think. But if they mess it up, the damage is massive. Take Death Knights for example. How do you make them work in vanilla? Because at level 1, a Death Knight killing boars in Durotar just makes no sense. A weak warrior or a rogue or a shaman or whatever makes sense. A weak Death Knight doesn't. They are super strong by default, that's the lore, and starting them at a higher level, I don't know, 40, also breaks the whole classic leveling experience. Same issue with Demon Hunters. And even if you add a class that fits the world from level 1, maybe something like a monk, it's still a huge risk for something the game doesn't actually need. Better to just spend those resources on systems that need more help. Should a 4th new talent spec be added? This is a better question, and 51% of players said yes if you limit it to hybrid classes and roles that never got properly fleshed out in vanilla. That's basically just part of the class rebalance that the game needs anyway. Guardian Druid is the obvious one, I would like to see it added. Maybe Tank Shaman too, I don't know. This expands gameplay without breaking the identity of the game. Should new professions be added? 62% said yes. I really hoped it would be higher, but I'll take it, because this might be one of the most important results in the whole survey. This is about horizontal progression. Classic desperately needs it, and that means changing some core systems because the game simply isn't strong in that area right now at all. Professions should be a major pillar for that. Not just useful while leveling, but deeply relevant at max level too. And they should require real effort and long-term investment to reach the best rewards if you want it. They shouldn't be mandatory either. Even though the question was about adding new professions, over 60% of people support it, which tells me that the players are open to big changes here, because a new profession is pretty big, and that's a huge signal. If Blizzard reads this correctly, professions could become one of the main long-term progression paths in Classic Plus. Should professions be updated to have more endgame relevance? Again, 91% of players said yes. Absolutely amazing. As I said, this is an absolute must. Pick 3 dungeons you think need a major revamp. and the top 3 are literally the worst dungeons in the game. I mean, the whole list is almost perfectly ranked, if you ask me. Number 1 is Nomergan, which honestly deserves a permanent spot in hell. It's by far the worst dungeon in this game, and it is on the number 1 spot. And in my opinion, the second worst dungeon is Sunken Temple, and it's on the second spot. And the third worst dungeon, in my opinion, is the Stockades, and again, it's the third dungeon here as well, the most forgettable dungeon ever created. So if Blizzard is actually paying attention, which I think they do, please, for the love of God, fix these dungeons. By the way, this also just proves how insanely out of touch they were with Season of Discovery. Out of the most disliked dungeons in the game, you took 2 of them and turned them into full raids. Since phase 1, I was sitting there thinking, who the fuck makes these decisions? You start with BFD, which I guess it's fine, but it's mid at best, and somehow that's your big 20-man raid, while Shadowfang Keep exists in that exact level bracket, which people love so much more and it has way more potential. Then you double down and the second raid is Nomergan and then Sunken Temple. What? Whoa! You couldn't make worse decisions. I don't know, it's incredible. Now about the PTR questions. Half the players said they're fine with no PTR and the risk of more bugs. And honestly, again, mostly the right mindset. PTR kills the magic. By the time the content launches, everyone already knows every mechanic, every drop, every strategy, and of course the story context of the raid. The game feels old before it even starts. That's the opposite of what made early WoW special. But the part where people say they prefer bugs is nonsense. Nobody prefers bugs. People want a surprise, not broken content. Those are not the same things. The ideal situation is no PTR and still a polished launch. This is a company making absurd amounts of money. They can absolutely test these raids internally. Other studios manage it, Blizzard can do it too, so the community should stop lowering their expectations and making excuses for them. Some bugs will happen, sure, but that doesn't mean a messy launch of a raid should be acceptable just because there is no PTR. This is a multi-billion-dollar company under Microsoft we are talking about. We should not accept this shit. 60% of people also agree there shouldn't be phased level caps, which is good because, again, in a game where the most tired talking point that you heard a million times already is the leveling journey is what makes Classic what it is, you for some reason decide, you know what if you could not level actually? I don't know, man. I think it's not a coincidence at all that they started calling Season of Discovery an experiment only after all the negative effects of their choices started being apparent. Because let's be real for a second here. What fucking person that knows anything about Classic or Vanilla goes and proposes that something like Nightmare Incursions should be experimented with? Like, if you reached level 20 once on any character in Vanilla, you already understand well enough that that kind of shit will never work in this game. All these obvious bad choices. I just think they wanted to make another seasonal server and they capitalized on the fact that everyone wanted Classic Plus and just hinted to this being a wild experiment. But only when they fucked up. They never mentioned that before. I am sure they were gonna use the knowledge from Season of Discovery when they were gonna start working on Classic Plus. Of course they would. But I really doubt that internally they actually looked at Season of Discovery as an experiment for the most part. It's just what they wanted to make. They fucked it up pretty badly with some things, and to get themselves out of that shit, they just pulled it's just a prank, bro, chill, and people bought it. Anyway, sorry for the Season of Discovery rant. Moving on. So the community gave strong answers across a lot of very important questions. It shows Classic players don't just enjoy the game, they actually understand why it works, and that's rare. Players are often terrible at predicting what will make their favorite game better long term. WoW has suffered from this a lot. People ask for something, developers deliver it, everyone is happy for a while, and years later you realize the game is much worse because of it. Dungeon Finder is the perfect example. Back in Wrath of the Lich King, tons of players wanted it. Blizzard added it, engagement went through the roof, so naturally they pushed even further with the Raid Finder. And slowly the game became more convenient, but much less social, less immersive, less meaningful. You know what it happened. Nobody planned that outcome, but it happened because short-term feedback looked amazing to not very good designers. So the job of a good designer isn't to blindly follow the community, but to listen, to analyze, to know when to push back. You focus on what players feel and what they tell you, but you must know when to say no. If all you do is react to feedback without vision, you stop designing and you start just chasing trends. And now you kill the game. That's why these surveys are still insanely valuable. Not because Blizzard should treat them like a checklist, but because they give a snapshot of how the average player thinks. That kind of data is absolutely gold if you know how to interpret it. The real question is whether Blizzard still has designers who can actually do that. I guess we'll find out. I think at this point, we've honestly done everything we could as a community. And we should be proud of how engaged we've been. Most of all Jordi. People went out of their way for this. We didn't just hand over a ton of valuable feedback and ideas, we also managed to find common ground on some of the biggest questions, which makes their job a lot easier. So once again, Blizzard, one of the least competent design teams of our time it seems, somehow gets extremely lucky again. But I don't care. I don't care how they pull it off. I just want a good Classic Plus. And if they still manage to mess this up with all of this information right in front of them, at that point they should probably be studied in a lab and then locked away for being a danger to society, because this level of incompetence should not be allowed outside of a well-guarded room. Anyway, that's the video. If you enjoyed it, consider liking and subscribing. I'm really excited for Classic Plus because of us, because of the community. Yeah, until next time, peace.